Conference, it isn't always easy to build an audience, but in recent years I've learned a trick or two. 2 years ago I appeared alongside Hugh Grant at a conference fringe and the room was overflowing. Last year I shared a platform at Westminster with Bill Gates. The committee room was packed. This morning I'm with Douglas Alexander and Jim Murphy. I'll leave it to you to vote later on which of them bears the greatest resemblance to either Hugh Grant or Bill Gates. Conference, this is a historic year for our commitment to international development. And I want to start by saluting you. Without your campaigning, your passion and your values, there is no way the United Kingdom would have reached the historic landmark in 2013 of spending 0.7% of gross national income on overseas aid. It would never have happened without you, and it would never have happened without the leadership of a Labour government. A Labour government which tripled aid, transformed DFID into a world-leading development agency, and ensured the world wrote off debt. A Labour movement working with the decent majority of the British people in pursuit of social justice at home and abroad. That combination was unstoppable then, and it can be unstoppable again in the future, Conference. I want to thank my excellent team, Rushnara Ali, Tony Cunningham, Ray Collins and Lucy Powell, for the tremendous support they've given me. When the cynics say that politics doesn't make a difference, all politicians are the same. Remind them who created the National Health Service, who established Sure Start, and who introduced the national minimum wage. And yes, Conference, who put Britain on the road to delivering its responsibilities to the poorest in the world? Labour, Labour, Labour and Labour again. Friends, too often we've allowed foreign policy to either be the preserve of an intellectual elite or fundamentalist anti-Europeans. Today I signal our determination to take the fight and the arguments to the squeezed middle, that the interdependence and interconnectivity of the modern world is not a choice but a reality. People's cost of living, their food bills, the cost of their fuel and the jobs which will be available for their kids and grandkids in the future are all influenced by developments way beyond our borders. That's why fair trade, energy security, tackling climate change and tax dodging are relevant to the everyday lives of people in our country. And to those who say we can't afford to spend less than 1 penny in every pound on overseas aid, I say you are wrong. The one nation Britain I love is a compassionate Britain, a Britain committed to fairness, a Britain which wants to see no child anywhere in the world left without food, a decent education, or access to universal health care. A Britain where people give record amounts to comic relief year after year in the good times and the bad. But also a Britain which understands that our world is changing. We can't allow, Conference, short-term austerity to undermine our long-term national interests. Our aid recipients of today will be our trading partners of tomorrow. One nation, one world is not a slogan, but a living, breathing expression of today's interconnected and interdependent world. So, Conference, what of the Tories? Well, of course, I welcome their decision to honour our commitment to 0.7. But, Conference, the difference between them and us can be summed up in one sentence. I didn't come into politics to help poor people. The chilling words not of some rogue right-wing Tory backbencher, but Justine Greening, David Cameron's choice to be Secretary of State for International Development. Well, Justine, I have a message for you this morning. I did come into politics to help poor people. So let's bring this election on and swap jobs as soon as possible. In only 3 years, the Tories have squandered Britain's world-leading legacy on international development. David Cameron was unwilling to put the time in the run-up to the recent G8. This led to disappointing progress on the tax dodging which cost developing countries millions in lost revenue. The Prime Minister has also failed to turn up for work at several key meetings where UK leadership on development could have made a real difference. And in typical Cameron style, in retreat from the right wing of his party, he has sought to face two ways. One day he says increasing aid is morally the right. The next he panders to the right and makes false claims that in future it will be primarily used to plug holes in the defence budget or support a business. A divisive Prime Minister leading a deeply divided party. For him, aid detox; for the nasty party. For us, development and expression of our core values and belief in social justice. Last year at conference, I asked Tessa Jowell to launch a global campaign to ensure investing in early childhood is put at the heart of the new post-2015 development framework. This summer, Tessa and I visited Malawi, where we saw for ourselves how in very difficult circumstances and against the odds, organisations like Sightsavers are offering hope to disabled children and their families. Today, conference, I can announce that Tessa is launching a global petition to mobilise people across the world to send a clear message to UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon that an integrated approach to the early years should be at the heart of international development in the future. If Sure Start and children's centres are right for our kids, then surely their underlying principles must be applied to the poorest children in the world. And conference, when we think about the poorest children in the world, let us reflect on what the children of Syria are facing as we meet here today. Witnesses to and victims of horrific violence. 1 million children made refugees, almost 2 million unable to go to school. That is why it is so important that we not only do our part, but galvanise other countries to step up to the plate and fulfil their responsibilities. Unfettered access for humanitarian agencies must now be the immediate top priority for the international community. Conference, Ed Miliband and Ed Balls have made it clear. Labour will apply iron discipline to the use of taxpayers' money. This will mean a Labour DFID from East Kilbride to offices around the world will only invest in programmes which offer value for money, deliver change for the poorest, and ultimately seek to support self-sufficiency and end aid dependency. We will always be the first to respond to humanitarian crises. A tough independent inspection regime will inspect both DFID programmes and DFID offices. Where programmes aren't delivering, they'll be ended. Where offices aren't performing, they will be subject to special measures. And we will end the scandal of private consultants inspecting private consultants. We will work with business and NGOs to invest in the infrastructure and to drive the cutting-edge innovation developing countries tell us that they need. But in return, business will have to operate decent labour standards throughout their supply chain, demonstrate a commitment to environmental sustainability, and be transparent about tax and profit both at home and abroad. Conference, the horrendous collapse of the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh, which killed over 700 people, should be a wake-up call to us all. Fair rights for workers, progressive trade unionism, and decent jobs should be the hallmark of successful economies and civilised societies. They will play a central role in Labour's progressive development policies for the 21st century. In 2005 conference, the world will come together to agree a new framework to replace the Millennium Development Goals, a framework which will apply equally to all countries, where developing and middle-income countries have an equal stake in change. In the aftermath of the financial crisis, and with the emergence of new economic and political powers such as China, India, Brazil, this is a big opportunity to recast the values which shape our world. For us, business as usual is simply not acceptable. We want to see a laser-like focus on inequality, not just poverty, growth which is sustainable and benefits the poorest, good governance which deals with the responsibilities of donors and multinational companies, as well as governments in developing countries. We've set out this year our vision for a new social contract without borders, which brings together the world's poverty reduction and sustainability objectives. And today I can announce we are mobilising global political change from opposition. We're in the process of developing a centre-left progressive coalition of politicians who share Ed Miliband's belief and vision that now is the time for radical change in the world, not tinkering at the edges. We favour big structural change on tax, trade, climate change and inequality. We want to see an end to extreme poverty by 2030, but also an end to aid dependency, with new relationships between countries built on reciprocity and shared values. Conference, in only 18 months, we will be fighting an election in this country. The Tories will try to persuade the British people that international development is somehow safe in their hands, that Britain's role in the world is governed by cross-party consensus. Conference, don't believe it. Our commitment is different. It's deep-rooted in our history. It's broader in its vision and its ambition. And above all, it is rooted in the values of social justice. When we come to that election, international development won't be an issue we tick off and pass by. It's an issue we will have to fight for. You see, Conference, the difference between us and the Tories is that we didn't come into politics to explain the world as it is. We came into politics to change the world. Thank you, Conference.